Dan Lyman, an incredible reporter on Twitter at Citizen Analyst. Be sure and follow him there. He got the video, some of the best video of the dark blue armored vehicles, hundreds and hundreds of them, dozens together, converging in on different parts of the city of Paris, attacking French citizens who are against the carbon tax, the open borders, and globalism. And now it's spreading all over Europe. Oh, and Bloomberg's reporting the Russians make, because George Soros has a bot machine dashboard that sites download, and then it tells you what's Russian and what isn't. He says I'm a Russian agent, so they have congressional hearings and said it and took me off most of the internet. So again, he's George Soros says the moon's made of cheese. It is, and they're moving to arrest Trump. We'll get into that next hour. Never a source of being boring. Alexandra Cortez now says she's Jewish because of all of her Palestinian anti-Israel stuff. Now suddenly, like Pocahontas is Native American, well now Cortez from Puerto Rico says that she learned that dozens of generations ago there was Sephardic Jews in her background. None of her family knows this, but she learned it. So this is all part of the endless lying out of this lady's mouth. That's all coming up. But Dan Lyman has gotten the incredible footage. He spent days there in Paris. Of course, you can read his work at Infowars.com and Newswars.com. But you can also go to the Europe link there, and I'll put that on screen for folks in a minute. But Dan, great job, and thanks for being here, and I'm glad you're safe.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you as well, Alex, and also good to be home.
Yeah, you're back in Switzerland now.
Just got back, yeah.
Well, you've got the floor. Tell us what you witnessed, what you saw, and the EU admits they think this may bring them down. I mean, the nationalism is spreading everywhere and exploding in France.
It is true, and it is definitely exploding. Good usage of the term. It was quite an eventful weekend. I went in not really knowing what to expect beyond reviewing the videos from the previous weekends, and it did not disappoint in terms of action. It was definitely it was a live battlefield in many ways, and you had to keep your head on a swivel at all times because it was just chaotic moments broken up by kind of tense moments where you're just kind of waiting for the next thing to happen, and it was just nonstop action.
Dan, get into it because, again, for people that don't know the history of the EU and how nationalistic these countries are, to have EU armored vehicles when the regular military and police stood down in most areas with the yellow vest the last 3 weeks, and now to see these armored vehicles, even some of the French papers pointed out, wow, this is a multinational EU army that they've been talking about. Here it is.
Yeah, there are concerns about that. Now, I did end up seeing some of these armored vehicles. I was on the lookout for them throughout the day. And then in the evening, as you'll see in this shot right here, I did get a chance. This is on Champs-Élysées. It was under de facto martial law at this point. They had all the inroads kind of sealed off. We managed to make our way down there, but there were only a couple of folks down there. And then they were lining up facing the Arc de Triomphe, and they lined up all these armored vehicles and the riot vehicles as well with the plows on the front. And then eventually they just made their way towards the Triomphe looking for trouble. I mean, it was definitely a tense situation. There was all sorts of violence from all sides. And so I can see why, you'd want a response to keep the calm. But seeing these EU flagged vehicles with no French logos on them whatsoever was definitely disturbing, to say the least.
We've also got Macron being sworn in to the German music, Beethoven's Ode to Joy, unprecedented, rubbing it in their faces.
They hate this guy. I didn't know what to expect in terms of like if they really would be anti-Macron or if they would be anti-EU or what the sentiment would be on the ground. A lot of these people, they use their vests to write statements on them, and the vast majority of the statements that I saw were anti-Macron statements, and they would get thousands of people chanting at a time, Macron démission, which I guess it roughly equates to resign Macron or Macron's resignation. And there was graffiti, all over the place, spray painted, Macron's got to go, stuff like that. So they definitely hate this guy. And it just makes me wonder how he did so well in the election. But of course, that's up for debate as well. But I would think that if they had elected someone like Le Pen, things might be in better shape there.
And, of course, she's leading in the polls. We see the Nationalist Party winning in Germany, winning in Spain, winning in Italy, winning in Greece, winning in Brazil, winning in Russia first with Putin. That's why they hate him. He is domino number one. With the nationalists kicking oligarchs out, kicking the foreign globalists out with a huge carbon tax. I mean, I know France already has the most expensive gasoline in Europe, but it roughly added something like €1 or $1 to every liter. I mean, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's. I lived in Iceland for a while, and we were paying about $8 a gallon there, and I didn't think that that was possible too many other places. But I do believe that French prices are approaching that. I think it's somewhere over $7 a gallon if that tax had stayed in place or if implemented. It's just. I mean, you can't go anywhere with that kind of charge on fuel. And in addition, I think a lot of these people are just hurting in general. They're so overtaxed, and I have to say, I met a lot of these yellow vesters and was around a lot of them. And myself, I've worked in construction. I've worked a lot of blue collar jobs in the past, painting, roofing, and I understood these people. I could feel the majority of them, who they are. They're blue collar workers, middle class, lower middle class people just trying to work and earn an honest living. I would say a lot of these people are not from Paris. They come in from the surrounding towns and countryside to voice their disapproval with what's going on there. And I really felt like I identified with a lot of these people. Of course, there are bad actors within the group, and there are people that are kind of hijacking it as well for their own purposes.
Sure, but sorry, go ahead.
In addition to just bad actors in general who just making the most of the chaos, there were a lot of people that I observed who were either apprehended or were committing acts that were definitely worthy of apprehension, that were not wearing yellow vests. They were just capitalizing on the chaos.
And let's be clear. Macron came in as a nationalist, control the borders. Then he said, patriotism is not having a country. The worst form of patriotism is being a nationalist. These are quotes. He said, we want 200 million more Africans brought in the next 20 years because that's our culture. And then he's doing all this. The average tax is over 80% in France. So the people are literally in hell. And the OECD, the globalist group, says that France is the model. Most of the EU bureaucrats obviously have been caught not even paying taxes. They have laws written where the EU bureaucrats are exempted EU-wide tax. No one else is. I mean, it's joke level how this unelected body does this. And here it is saying, if you have nationalist uprisings to try to kick our policies out of carbon taxes, no single-family dwellings, I mean, this is all EU world government policy, we will send in an EU army to stop you. If Italy uses its navy to stop Soros-funded rubber boats being brought across, bringing in Islamic invaders, we'll have our military board you and stop you. These are public statements that the EU will use its military to stop nation states that don't follow its order. This is insane. England never voted to be part of it. It's part of it. It's the same thing with France and others. And so that's why this is so huge. And I don't see this populist wave worldwide being stopped, Dan Lyman, and I see what we see here in France. Even the EU says they believe this could, quote, bring down Europe. Well, this isn't Europe. The EU is a criminal corporate cabal looting Europe and opening it up for invasion.
Absolutely. And if Paris is the model for the rest of the world, then we got problems, because Paris is a wreck aside from all of this stuff. I mean, I took a couple of long rides through the city coming in from the airport, and it's occupied territory. You're hard pressed to see someone that you might think is a French person walking the streets in a lot of these neighborhoods. In addition, I got to lay eyes firsthand on some of these tent cities that are going up all around the city, just entire areas that are occupied by homeless foreigners. And there's nothing done about them. There's nothing being done to mitigate them, except once in a while they'll sweep them out and they'll just recongregate in another area. So anyone who wants a glimpse of what the future could look like if you let your own city or town fall to this agenda, just go to Paris and spend a few days there, and you will regret it immensely.
By the way, my parents like to go to Europe at least once a year. They've been doing it for 40 years. I mean, they've been to Europe at least 35, 40 times, and they will not go anywhere in France anymore. Everyone I know that lives in France is moving out. A lot of areas of Italy you can't go to anymore. A lot of areas of England, the people they know in England, when they have friends that live there, will not go into London. It's just incredible what the globalists have done. They have brought in literally the lowest IQ, dumbest, poorest people of the third world. So they've exported and imported the worst people statistically on the planet. A bunch of military-age men, homeless, inbred, mentally retarded in many cases, running around foaming at the mouth, crapping all over the ground and raping people, and 90+% never get a job. They just walk around crapping. All right, Dan Lyman, InfoWars reporter. We really should get him on every week. He heads up InfoWars Europe. You just go to Europe. Let's put the URL on screen, because I have to be honest with you. We launched InfoWars Europe, and then I'm always just clicking on it on my site. I have it saved. I'm never looking at the URL. So it's the URL, not just the site I want to show. It's the URL, not just the site I want to show. What's the best way for people to get to InfoWars Europe, Dan?
Easiest one to remember is europewars.com, but of course you can do europe.infowars.com, but europewars.com will redirect to the site properly.
Absolutely. So europewars.com. Listen, I'm teleprompter free. I'm 45. I used to have a photographic memory. I just literally half the time can't remember what's going on. But I think that's also just part of having so many moving parts at once, Dan. The world seems to be quickening right now.
It sure does. It's like, you know, I heard George Papadopoulos is already out of jail, so that means he's served for 2 weeks. That seems like it was like just a couple days ago that was being announced. So the quickening is definitely happening, and the news never slows down. It's just getting crazier.
Dan, in the few minutes we have left here, what are you observing in Europe? What are you seeing? What would you call this period we're in? Because huge nationalism, huge awakening, really positive things, but then the floodgates of globalist money and the Chi-Com influence in Hollywood just has unleashed its full wrath and shown us just how bad these people are. What would you call this struggle, and where would you say we're at?
Wow, we are definitely at the beginning of something major. This is just the beginning in Paris. This is obviously starting to catch fire across Western Europe. One of the most poignant videos I saw from the weekend was actually from the Yellow Vest protests in Brussels. These people were attempting to storm the big European Union building. And I thought that was very symbolic, because if that is accomplished, maybe the next time they try it, it probably will be pretty violent. But if for any reason that's caught on video and it happens, that will be a symbolically devastating blow to the EU and the globalist agenda, to see the people, the everyday, you know, forgotten men and women just storming one of their bastions of, you know, of globalism. And you know, we hope for peace, definitely, but these protests are pretty violent. A lot of the police are very heavy-handed. I've seen some pretty disturbing videos. One of the most disturbing things I saw this weekend myself was we were, you know, you kind of standing with the crowds, and then every once in a while something major happens and everyone goes rushing in a direction to get away from a flashbang or tear gas. So we're standing there against the wall, and I'm observing along Champs-Élysées, and the crowd starts rushing. And one guy goes running by me with blood pouring down his face, and it looked like something major had happened to his eye or above his eye. And right after that, a projectile hit right above my head against the wall. And I just started running with everybody else. And I started thinking, man, are they really firing, you know, probably non-lethal rounds or something like that into the crowd? And it did turn out there was some video evidence that suggested that one girl had indeed lost her eye by being shot by something by the police. And then I was in a cafe the next day, and the waiter there said he observed another man who had his eye blown out by a non-lethal round by police near the Arc de Triomphe in front of his restaurant. There have been it's been kind of gory, and I hope that some of these police officers, that they think twice before they do this. But I don't know if they will, because some of them are definitely good guys. They mean well, and they're just trying to do their job. And some of them are just like mercenaries for the EU. Some of the roughest guys were undercover. They were roaming in packs. They were big guys with, you know, they were fully armed, and they were taking people down very aggressively. And there was very little indicator as to who they worked for.
And you've got EU armored vehicles, and it's come out, some of them from outside France. For the first time since Hitler was kicked out in 1945, we have foreign EU troops in France attacking the public, just blowing their eyes out, all of this. But the good news is Macron is going to have to resign. He's had to back off on the carbon tax. The one place they thought they could get it through, and they failed. Dan Lyman, A+, God bless you. You're an amazing reporter. I'm so blessed that the audience supports us so we can fund your great work that I know you're expanding as well, building our European bureaus. So, Dan, everybody should follow you right now at Twitter, @CitizenAnalyst. We'll be right back.